Today I'm making a 100% whole wheat bread using the stretch and fold method. I just want to make a very simple bread today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my scale going, and I measure in grams. However, I'm going to be telling you cups measurements as well, just for those people that like to use cups instead. However, I do highly encourage using a scale and using weight for your measurement. It's much more precise when it comes to baking. So first, whole wheat flour. Now, why whole wheat flour? Because whole wheat flour still has all the bran and all the good stuff, the fiber and everything like that, all the good nutrients from the wheat. This is the stuff you want, because once you've removed all that, all the really good things about the wheat are gone, and all you're really left with is a bunch of starch. Not so with whole wheat flour. So you want to use this. You can use einkorn, you can use spelt, you can use rye, all sorts of things. I don't actually have recipes for some of those yet, but I am working on it. I'm going to start with 200 grams of flour. That's about 1 3/4 of a cup. When I say about, I'm 200 grams. Then I'm going to tear out my bowl, and to that I'm going to add some warm water. Now, this is probably 110 degrees or so. It's not super warm, but it's warm enough. Just let me level that out. I don't know why. I just feel like I need to have the little hole in the middle, even though it doesn't really matter for this. And I'm going to use 200 grams of water. That's about 3/4 of a cup. Now, I'm using warm water just to help speed up the proofing process a little bit. Generally speaking, I will put in most of the water. I put in about 166 grams at this point, and I want to just give that a mix around. Yep, it's going to need it all. So that was 166, so that means I need 34 more grams, because now there's some on the spoon and all that. So let me just add 34 more grams. Tear it out. All right, so we have our full water in here. The reason I'm using so much water, some of you might realize, that is a 100% hydration dough. Yes, whole wheat flour soaks up a lot more water than regular flour does, or even bread flour does. And that's mostly because there's so much fiber. It just soaks a lot in. You may find you need more water than even that. I have gone as high as 120% before, and it worked really, really well. This one is coming out pretty dry so far, so I may have to go a little bit higher. But now I just want to mix this around until it forms just a nice soft dough, just to make sure I have enough hydration in there. That looks pretty good. Yeast. Okay, I usually eyeball this. Use, about that much. What's that? Maybe a teaspoon or so? Half a teaspoon? That's it. And this is Fleischmann's active dry yeast. Nothing super fancy. I just like to keep it simple. Can you use a starter? Yeah. Can you use, other types of yeast? Of course. Can you use fresh yeast? Of course you can. Use whatever yeast you have available to you. I just want to mix this through. Actually, this is looking pretty good. What I'm looking for, see that texture where it's soft, but it's still, it's not liquid. It's like really thick oatmeal is an easy way to do it. Or a super thick pancake batter would be even better. What you want to do is make sure you get all the dry mixed into the wet. That is what you're looking for. Once I get it formed into a nice cohesive ball here, you see that it's sticking to the spoon wheel a little bit. I like to just scrape that off on the side as best I can, get it back in there, and then clean the side up a little bit. Now I'm going to put a lid on it. I'm not going to put it on tight, just set a lid on there. Let this go for 10 minutes, and then I'll show you what's next. All right, 10 minutes went by, and now with very clean hands, I'm going to get in here and do our first stretch and fold. The gist of it is, get some water, and this is still warm water, okay? You still do have water over here. And then you get in here, and you get underneath it, and you lift up and pull over. Now, the first time, it's just going to be a mess, okay? It's not really a cohesive dough yet. The gluten has not been formed. Then I turn it 90 degrees, get under it, pull till I feel tension, and drop it on itself again. Usually I end up dipping my hand every time the first couple times around. Then again, 90 degrees, get underneath it, pull up, and it's already starting to come together just a little bit, which is pretty cool. What this is this is an alternative method to kneading, okay? You can knead this dough if you want to. It's a little bit loose and wet, so that's why I like the stretch and fold method. It's really, really quick. It does take more time than kneading, I'll be honest, but it's a whole lot easier. 4 stretch and folds, done. Put the lid back on. See you in 10 minutes. All right, 10 more minutes. Again, very clean hands, and we are ready for stretch and fold number 2. Now, this dough is already starting to rise just a little bit. That's a good thing. That means our yeast has been activated. And again, wet hand, get in, get underneath it, lift up when I feel some tension, flop it over, get under 90 degrees, get over here, get underneath it, lift it up. You can see it's holding together nicely. Flip it over, 90 degrees, same thing. Generally speaking, I'll do 3, maybe 4 stretch and folds on this particular recipe. Depends on if it needs the 4th or not. This time around, it's actually coming together really nicely, so I may only need 3. But anyway, that was number 2. Covered up, 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes, take off the lid. Very clean hands, into the water again, and we're going to do our 3rd stretch and fold. By this point, some gluten has formed, without a doubt. It's definitely got some gluten going. That's what we want to see, because that's what gives bread its rise. It lets it get all puffy and, fluffy and that kind of thing. Whole wheat bread doesn't tend to rise quite as much or as light and airy as white bread, but it's so much more nutritious for you that it's kind of okay. And again, just do my 4 stretch and folds. This might even be 5, I'm not sure. And see how it just lifts right out of the pan? It's very stretchy at this point. That's good. I do feel like it needs the 4th stretch and fold. So 10 more minutes, be back. Okay, 10 more minutes, clean hands, take off the lid, and we do our final stretch and fold. Now, as you can see, it's a little bit more puffy than it was last time. It should have a pretty decent gluten formation at this point, and this should be it. Yeah, there we go. Nice and stretchy. It is very elastic. You can see that it just kind of holds its own weight. That is exactly what we're looking for. Look at that. That's good gluten formation there. That's exactly what you need to happen. If you don't have it at this point, it's okay. You can do another stretch and fold. You can do several more if you want to. There's no harm. What I'm going to do now is just kind of form it into a little bit of a ball. Just fold it under. It's not 100% necessary, but this helps trap some of the gases just a little bit better. And now it's time for the bulk proofing phase. And what that means is let this sit for about an hour. Sometimes it takes an hour and a half, sometimes even 2 hours, depending on the temperature of your house. Just be careful. Once it gets to maximum size, it can actually start to cave in and fall. So you don't want to overproof. I usually really need an hour in my house. We keep it at 75 to 79 degrees Fahrenheit here. So if you keep it warmer, it might rise faster. If you keep it much cooler, like 60s or below, it may take longer. Because this is a yeasted bread, you want that yeast to activate and it starts filling up all those little nooks and crannies with gases. And that's what all that gluten does, is it holds those gases in. See you in an hour. All right, so I said an hour to an hour and a half. Well, it's been 45 minutes and, well, it's more than doubled in size. So I thought at this point, I don't want to let it go too much further. It could overproof. That could be bad, okay? That means collapsing bread. You don't want that. So we're going to shape it and we're going to start baking it. At this point, set your oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. That is about 235 degrees Celsius. And what I want to do is prepare my work surface, which is a fancy way of saying put some flour out. Literally just going to grab a nice handful. You do not want this to stick. That's the gist. So I want to coat that really good. Keep that handy. You might need it. And I'm just going to dump this out unceremoniously, just like that. But look at that, nice big bubbles. Looks fantastic. I'm going to use a dough scraper, get some dough underneath it. Yep, it's very sticky. But it did rise up really nice. So now what we're actually doing, this is still very, very soft. So what I want to do is build a little bit of structure into it. So I'm going to take my dough on the long side and roll it over onto itself. Something like that. I'm just going to keep rolling it. If it sticks, get underneath it with the scraper. And I want to form it into a log. Now, before I go much further, I want to make sure that there's a lot of dry flour around it because that helps soak it up. It keeps it from being too soft and moist, keeps it from sticking as well. But I want to just kind of gently nudge it. See what I'm doing? I'm building tension. You can do the sides. Needs more flour. If you find it needs more flour, feel free. Put more flour out. I'm just going to push those sides in. Yeah, see, it's sticking to me too much, so I just want to make sure I get my fingers under. Do that. Push it back. Get my fingers under. Curl my fingers this way and pull just a little bit. I'm creating tension on that dough against the surface. You can turn it around and do the same thing. Just like that. That gets you a loaf shape that will hold in the oven, okay? The outside will form a nice crust, and the rest will actually just rise up a little bit more. It gives a little bit drier on the outside. That way you have a crust to hold in all that air, but it can actually still rise in the oven. So you don't want to add too much tension, just enough. Now I have here a baking sheet with some parchment paper. I like to use parchment paper because I think it browns a little bit better than using the Silpats. So now I'm going to lift it up, drop it on there. You want to do that relatively quickly so that you don't ruin all the work you did. And then I'll just get under there with a little bit of the scraper, and I'm building back that tension. You don't want to over tension, but at the same token, I want it to look nice too. You know? Just a little bit of work. If it sticks, hit it with some flour. You can just kind of go under the side, give a little scrape, and there we go. Nicely shaped dough. Let me go get a towel so I can cover this up. All right, so I have a clean, lint-free towel here, but what I want to do is scrape up some of this excess flour from the table, and I just want to kind of sprinkle it over the top. The reason for that is so that the towel doesn't stick, because you don't want the towel to stick to your bread either. Just kind of get it on there and spread it around a little bit. You don't want too much. It's not really to add flavor or anything. It's literally just to keep the towel from sticking. And the towel is really just to keep drafts off of it, you know, bugs, cat hair, whatever you might have in your house. And this is going to sit for about 20 to 30 minutes while my oven preheats. Be back in a bit. All right, it's been like 22 minutes or so, and our bread has flattened out just a little bit and puffed up slightly. It is also ready to go in the oven. Our oven is totally preheated, and it's going to go in for about 25 minutes, give or take. I usually start looking at it at about 20 minutes, and anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes seems just perfect for our oven. Your mileage may vary. See you in a bit. All right, so this one took 22 minutes to finish. And as you can see, it rose a little bit more than what we showed. Now, if I used a little bit less hydration, we might get it to be a little stiffer and firm up a little bit more. You can also put this in a pan if you want to. I just like the freeform. And I actually wanted kind of a ciabatta style bread for this, because what we're actually going to do is I'm going to cut this in half, and we're going to put some stew on top of it and serve it with dinner. So what I want to do now is get it off the pan. Yeah, hear that? That hollow thump, that's what you want. And I want to put it on a cooling rack, because you don't want to cut this yet. You want this to cool for at least half an hour. I normally can't go quite that long, especially when I just want to taste it to show you guys what it tastes like. So what I'll probably do is wait 20 minutes or so, and then I will give you a little snippet of the end of it. All right, it's been a few minutes. It's been like 10 minutes. I can't wait anymore. I really want to try this, and I'm getting really hungry seeing it here, smelling it. So I'm just going to cut a piece off the end. The crust is rather thin. I would have thought it was going to be a little crispier than that, but it's okay. Had I cooked it longer, I could definitely make a crispier crust. However, we have a pretty decent crumb on the inside. Now again, this bread is not fully done yet, but let me just give this a quick tear. Oh yeah, comes apart nicely. That crust is holding together. It's going to be nice and chewy. Okay, whole wheat bread to me has a whole different flavor than regular bread. It's more nutty, it's more, not earthy, but there's stronger flavors to it. And this is wonderful. You'll notice something else too. I didn't add any salt. A lot of people say you have to add salt or else it doesn't work and blah, blah, blah. It's just not true. This bread worked beautifully well without any added salt. So it's low sodium, very, very good for you. Honestly, this is great. I made this exact recipe a few times, and I've used it as hamburger buns and things like that. It works awesome. I actually made a pizza using the same exact dough. This is quickly becoming my replacement to my one dough rules them all. It's just much, much simpler. There's less fat, there's more fiber, there's more nutrition. It tastes really, really great. I like it better than the old bread. It's just got that lovely, nutty, feels like an artisan style bread, even without being super big and fluffy. Now, can you shape this a little differently to get it higher, to get it longer? Yes, absolutely you can. If you wanted to leave out a little bit of the hydration, you totally can do that too and get it to maybe go just a touch higher. This one's spread out a little bit, but like I said, I wanted a ciabatta style bread today. Now, at this point, what do you do with it? If you're not going to eat this all today, I suggest wrapping it up once it's cool and putting it in the freezer. Don't put this in the fridge. It'll go stale overnight. But in the freezer, it'll keep for months, and when you're ready to use it, pull it out, let it come to room temperature, good to go.